What's up, witches? It's Megan. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to briefly discuss working with moon energy and how you can work with moon phases. Just a quick reminder that as you either listen to this podcast episode or watch this video on YouTube, my family and I are currently making our way across the country from Oregon to Florida. So I may not be as responsive with comments or on social media when this comes out, but please know that as soon as I'm able, I will go back and reply to all comments on the YouTube channel, as well as any comments on Instagram, Facebook, or in the Discord server and the Facebook group. So just know, probably I am driving right now, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I also need to mention that the audio might be a little different. I'm recording in a different room. I don't have a separate mic. I'm using the mic on my camera, so the audio might be kind of funky. I do apologize about that, but at this point, I can't do anything about it. So I guess let's just continue. I wanted to talk about working with the moon and working with moon energy in your witchcraft and your spell work. Now, not everyone is going to resonate with moon magic or moon energy, and there are several different ways to work with moon energy and several different ways that the moon energy is perceived. So, not everyone works with the energy of the moon, and that's totally fine. Like, if working with the phases of the moon doesn't resonate with you and doesn't play a part in your witchcraft, that's 100% okay. Some people just don't feel drawn to the energy of the moon, and in certain traditions, the moon is a gendered energy. So, what I mean is, in some traditions, for example, most Wiccan traditions, the energy of the moon is associated with the goddess and a quote unquote feminine energy. This gender dynamic doesn't resonate with everyone, myself included, and that's totally okay. And depending on the culture and tradition that you look at, the gendered variances are swapped. The phases of the moon don't always represent a feminine energy. Sometimes it is representative of a masculine energy, just depending on the culture that you're looking at. Throughout most of history, the moon has played a significant role in a lot of different cultures and traditions. Not every culture and tradition gives the moon any significance. So just keep that in mind as you go through and you listen or watch this episode, and as you do your research into other traditions and cultures and how you resonate with the energy of the moon. In a physical sense, the moon plays a role in our physical world. I mean, one of the reasons that we have ocean tides is because of the gravitational pull between the moon and the sun and Earth. That push and pull creates those waves. According to some sources, there are different species of animals and plant life that thrive because of the different moon phases, and without the phases of the moon or the ability to tune in with that gravitational pull and that energy, those species would be lost. And this is because they base their reproductive cycles on the phases of the moon. The links for this information will be in the description and in the show notes for anyone that's interested. The California grunion fish, I think is what it's called, and several different types of sea turtles would be lost without the moon. And this is because they have evolved to be highly attuned to the tides, the rising and the falling tides. According to some sources, these sea turtles lay their eggs and time the hatching of their offspring to the tides to give their offspring the best chance of survival. And this has just become something that they have evolved to do based on the rising tides, high tide and low tide, and all of this is caused by the moon. So if the moon were to just disappear, these species would have no idea what to do. Now, as far as the moon within Wicca, the moon phases in Wicca are representative of the triple goddess in her phases as maiden, mother, and crone. I'm not going to go too much into that because that goes down a tradition-specific path, and I want to speak on working with the energy of the moon specifically, outside of any tradition. So just know that within Wicca, the phases of the moon are corresponded with the different stages of life of the goddess. Now, outside of Wicca, there are also many, many gods and goddesses that have a connection to the moon in one form or another. Some examples of these include Selene, Luna, Artemis, Diana. Those are just a couple. I'm sure there are gods or goddesses that are representative of the moon in many cultures across many pantheons in paganism. And I have an example here from a story of the Aboriginal peoples of Australia. If I get this wrong, please feel free to correct me in the comment section below, or if you're listening to the podcast, feel free to reach out to me on any form of social media. What I have here comes from sacred texts, and it's according to a storybook that was written by someone named K. Langloh Parker in 1905. In this Aboriginal story, which Aboriginal, those people are from Australia. I believe it's the indigenous peoples of Australia. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty confident. But in this story, the moon is a masculine deity while the sun is a feminine one. And it's a really interesting story. I don't want to read the whole thing to you here in this episode because it can be kind of long, but I will link it in the description and in the show notes, and I encourage you to go read it and get a new perspective on different gods and goddesses in cultures that you may not have been exposed to before. Again, it comes from sacred texts, it's online, and it is free to read. So when working with different moon energies, what I find most common is that people work with the new moon, the waxing moon, the waning moon, the full moon, and some witches work with the dark moon. Now there's a difference between the dark moon and the new moon, and not a lot of people actually know about it, so I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I wanted to let you know that the correspondences that I'm going to talk about here are my own personal correspondences and the way I feel towards moon phases and how they affect me. If you listen to the previous episode that I did about non-pagan resources, I spoke about an app that I use to keep track of the moon phase, and that I mainly do it to see how the moon phases affect me personally and not necessarily in a witchy manner. But when I do work with the moon phases, these are the correspondences that I have for myself, and I want to talk about them. But I need to let you know that these are my personal correspondences and they might be different for you, and that's totally okay. So the first moon phase that I want to talk about is the new moon. The new moon is that first sliver of light that you can see from the moon in the sky right after the dark moon. Some people equate the dark moon and the new moon and say that they are the same. However, that's actually not true. The new moon is that point in time right when the moon just begins to start waxing, just begins to start getting bigger. During the new moon, the energy of that specific moon phase is neutral due to being almost right in the middle of the waxing and waning phases. The new moon is a good time for new beginnings, hope, and starting over. It's also a good time for adding energy to goals that you already have in motion or setting new goals entirely. The waxing moon is when the moon is getting bigger. So as the moon in the sky is growing and every night you can see more and more of the moon, that is the waxing moon. As the moon grows, so does the energy that is associated with it. The larger the moon grows, the brighter it gets in the sky as it is illuminated by the sun. The waxing moon is full of growing energy that is perfect for bolstering confidence, boosting creativity, and positive transformations. The next moon phase is obviously the full moon. This is when you can see the moon in its entirety in the night sky. It is illuminated at 100% illumination, and it is one of the most powerful phases of the moon that you can work with if you're going to work with moon magic. With the night sky fully illuminated by the full moon, we are reminded that everything grows and everything also diminishes. The full moon teaches us that we must work to achieve our potential, but not waste it away when the time comes. The energy of the full moon is good for all aspects of spell work, as this is when the energy is most viable. It is during this time that we may manifest our desires, achieve our goals, and protect what's ours. After the full moon comes the waning moon. This is when the moon is getting smaller in the sky. It is diminishing night by night, working its way towards the dark moon. As the light of the moon begins to fade, so should our intentions. The sky begins to darken again, and we are reminded of the things that we should let go of and move on from. The darkening sky is also a reminder of those we should forgive and those who don't deserve our forgiveness. Common forms of spell casting using the energy of the waning moon include cleansing, moving on, binding, and releasing. Lastly, we come to the period of the dark moon. Now, as I said, this is one that often gets confused for the new moon, but the dark moon is when there is 0% illumination of the moon in the sky. You can't see the moon at all, and there's no illumination, no moon in the sky. At this point, the night sky is dark, and all you can see are the stars in the sky. With no visible light from the moon, the darkness is a time of deep reflection and introspection. At this point, we rest. Spell work should not be done during the dark moon because it is a point of rest and introspection. Everyone has to rest sometimes. Your energy cannot be at 100% capacity every single day. Neither can the energy of the moon. And at this point, we need to reflect on what has happened in this previous moon cycle and maybe think about the things that no longer serve us and how we can let them go. So if you choose to work with the moon phases in your magic, there are several different ways that you can do this and incorporate the energy of the moon into your daily practice or your spell work. The first and most obvious way that you can do this is cast your spells by the phase of the moon. So, for example, if you want to work with the energy of the moon in your spell work and you want to cast a banishing spell or a releasing spell, you wouldn't necessarily do this during a waxing moon because the energy of the moon is getting bigger, and this is the point in time where things are growing and you want to bring things to you. So if you're going to do a banishing spell and use the phases of the moon, I would do this either during the full moon or during the waning moon when things are getting smaller and it's a time of letting things go and pushing things away from you. The second way that you can use the moon energy that I personally do within my own practice is use the energy of the full moon or other moon phases to charge moon water or different objects for specific purposes. For example, I make moon water every full moon. I sometimes put it in my coffee. I leave it on my altar. I will use it to gently clean my crystals that are water safe. But you can also charge different objects during different phases of the moon. So if you are looking to protect yourself, you can charge an amulet during the full moon. Or if you are wanting to keep negativity away from you, you can also charge an amulet during the waning moon as sort of a banishment and protection against that negative energy. So there are many different ways that you can work with the moon energy in that aspect, but the correspondences are going to be personal to you. Also, if you happen to garden or grow your own food, you can work with the energy of the moon in that respect by planting and harvesting and tilling your garden based on the phases of the moon. There's a whole load of information on gardening with the phases of the moon at the Farmer's Almanac. I'll leave the link in the description and in the show notes for their website, but it's also like a complete book that you can buy every year that has a whole year's worth of information on planting and gardening with the phases of the moon. So it's very interesting, and I recommend checking it out if you garden or do any sort of planting or growing of your food. Now, on another note, there are names for the full moons in the year. It's said that these names for the full moons come from the indigenous peoples of the Americas, but I can't verify that with 100% certainty, and in some places the names differ. So I'm not sure if it's based on geographical location or what. But for example, the full moon for the month of June is called the strawberry moon. And from what I've read, it's called the strawberry moon because this is typically a strawberry harvesting season, and it just happened to correlate. However, I did read somewhere that the full moon for the month of June in Europe is called the rose moon. Again, I can't verify that with 100% certainty. I live in the United States and I just don't know. So if you have different names that you use for the full moons, let me know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast, join me over on Discord or in my Facebook group and let me know what you use for the names of the full moons. Now, there are also different lunar events that happen throughout the year. These include eclipses and blue moons. Now, a blue moon is not literally a blue moon, not typically. A blue moon is just a term that is used for a month that has 2 full moons in it. The second full moon of that month is called a blue moon. Despite the saying of something happening once in a blue moon and it being rare, a blue moon actually happens every couple of years, and it's not as rare as people would think. Eclipses and blue moons have their own specific energies and correspondences that attach to them, and I will talk about those eventually. I might just make a blog post about it unless you want a whole video or podcast episode. Let me know if that's the case. But those are not as common as working with a full moon energy because that can be done regularly and in a daily practice. Working with the energy of any eclipse or blue moon is, in my opinion, it's separate. It's a completely different energy. Now, I don't personally work a lot with moon energy. There are some specific cases where I will, like charging moon water or doing a banishing, or sometimes just meditating under the light of the full moon. I don't have a specific deity association with the moon, and it's not something that I really feel 100% drawn to or that resonates completely with me. However, I can't discount the fact that the energy of the moon in the moon phases does affect me on a physical level, and that's something that I've been tracking for a while, but I don't have a definitive pattern worked out yet. I just know that in certain points in time, in certain moon phases, certain things happen with me, like mood swings or depression or anxiety or mania, even very, very high level energy. And since I can physically feel that energetic pull, I can't discount the spiritual aspect of working with the moon. Thank you so much for being here and listening to my different correspondences and how I work with the moon phases. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know in the comments below how you work with the moon. If you are listening to the podcast episode, again, join me over on Discord or in my Facebook group, or follow me on Instagram or Twitter and let me know there. I know that some of my correspondences actually differ from some other witches that I have spoken to, and I find it fascinating how it can affect me one way and affect someone else a different way. Make sure you stick around for my next video. On Thursday, we will be making a moon phase calendar directly from NASA. So we have a little craft that we can do to add to our grimoires or books of shadows. And it was actually a lot of fun. So stick around for that as well. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much for all of your support. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Rose at wiccanhomestead.com. And thank you, Renee. If you would like to help support the work I do here at Round the Cauldron, please feel free to join me at patreon.com/roundthecauldron, where you can get patron exclusive content for as little as $1 a month. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.